I was premature then.
Now we're formally owned by 140.
Oh, yeah. City Hall standing seam sections have been delayed. Yeah, you're right. My mistake.
We're annexing the Army Reserve Center.
Interesting sort of.
Good for us.
I think it's funny for this.
How can we all set?
Yeah,
Want to see the link?
yeah, that was an
So
example of,
that's
you
who
know,
Ready?
want us to have it because they want us to have a center. And I know
No, I just.
One
that
minute.
makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. I didn't want to see that.
Good evening. Welcome to the regular twice monthly meeting of Westminster's Mayor and Common Council. Please note that our meetings, although open to the public here at City Hall, will continue to be available and streamed live on the city's YouTube page, as well as the Community Media Center channel and website. Now we'll begin, as we do every meeting, with the pledge to the flag, followed by a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. As a courtesy to everyone, please take a moment to silence your cell phones or any other electronic devices that you might have with you that might disturb the meeting. Copies of tonight's agenda and the entire information packet that the council will be using are available online on the city's website. And I believe some copies of the agenda are in the front of the room for anybody who is here with us today. Pleased to have the State's Attorney for Carroll County, Mr. Alan Culver, with us tonight.
Thanks for
Culver, always nice to see you. Thanks for coming tonight. We're also pleased to have former Mayor Joe Dominic visit with us again. So, Mr. Mayor, if you keep showing up, we're going to have to stop introducing you.
I was waiting to see that seems to be a bit.
Come jump up here.
You have to arm wrestle her when she's feeling better. Mayor Becker is not feeling well tonight, so she won't be with us here in person, but she is watching the meeting online. But she's, I don't think able to stop coughing long enough to speak to us. So we will, we'll just be glad that she gets to listen in and participate that way. First, we'll consider the approval of the minutes. We have minutes from the meeting of the Mayor and Common Council of March 28th, 2022. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
A motion by Ms. Gilbert. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And a second by Mr. Huff. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. The ayes seem to have it, and the ayes have it, and the minutes are approved. Next item is presentations to the council, and we've got several tonight. But first, we're pleased to announce that the newly inaugurated president of McDaniel College has offered to have a senior member of the college staff join us for each meeting to share some news from the Hill, as well as report back to the college leadership on what they learned at our meeting. We've had a few representatives from the college at our last couple of meetings, but this is the first since Dr. Jaskin made this announcement. And we're very pleased for this meeting, as it becomes a regular part of our agenda, to welcome the provost of McDaniel College, Dr. Rosa Rivera-Heinage. Dr. Rivera-Heinage joined McDaniel as the provost in 2021, having most recently served as associate vice president of academic affairs at Our Lady of the Lake University in San Antonio, Texas. She brings to McDaniel a broad range of experience in college access, curricular innovation, and student success efforts that result in improved outcomes. I've had the opportunity to meet the provost a few times since her arrival in Westminster, and I'm delighted to report that she and her family are currently making their home here in the city of Westminster. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Sure. So if you'd like to go ahead and share whatever you like at this time, that's fine.
No problem. Well, thank you so much for having me here today. Our cabinet, we are taking turns in visiting with the city of Westminster during their council meetings, just to make sure that we get to learn about what's happening in the city. At the same time, we get to share what's happening in McDaniel. So a couple of things I would like to share. Many of you participated last week in the inauguration event of our 10th president, Dr. Julia Jaskin. Activities started on Wednesday leading up to Saturday. So it was great to see you all, many of you at the Wednesday reception for the city, Friends of the City of the college, as well as Saturday during the ceremony and then the evening events. So we have one day of rest and here are again today. But a couple of things that we're really excited about is that McDaniel Environmental Center has received additional support from the state to undergo expansion and renovations. So that's going to take part of the environmental center, as well as they have the Harvey Stone Pavilion on campus, as well as expansion of our greenhouse. So everything related, and we're really excited about converting the pavilion into an outside classroom that will be available for the community as well. So we'll have water, electric, IT, and accessibility added to the area. So really excited about that. And the other piece is our Center for Experience and Opportunity that many of you heard a lot about during this last week's event. But Erin Benevento, our Associate Dean for Student Development, has been working hard, meeting with the city administrators to bring more of our students to the downtown Westminster area. So we're really working in making sure that they feel comfortable and they are, well received and involved and engaged in other activities in downtown. So that in a snip, that's what we're doing. We have a lot of great things happening, and we'll be sharing that with you. And we're also looking for opportunities to partner as we become really one, the city with the college.
Great. Well, thank you very much for coming. We'll look forward to these regular visits. And I know that in one way or another, since between Wednesday and Saturday evening, all of us had the opportunity to participate in the inaugural ceremonies. And it was a pleasure to be there. And we thank you very much for including us in all of those activities. And we're looking forward to a closer relationship between the city and the college. Move on now. We have a mayoral proclamation, but of course the mayor is not able to do that. But I think the city administrator is going to share that with us. It's for National Public Safety Telecommunications Week. Ms. Imhoff?
Thank you, sir. Whereas emergencies can occur at any time that require police or emergency medical services, and whereas when an emergency occurs, the prompt response of police officers is critical to the protection of life and preservation of property. And whereas the safety of our police officers is dependent upon the quality and accuracy of information obtained from citizens who telephone the Westminster Police Communications Center. And whereas public safety telecommunicators are the first and most critical contact our citizens have with emergency services. And whereas public safety telecommunicators are the single vital link for our police officers by monitoring their activities by radio, providing them information, and ensuring their safety. And whereas public safety telecommunicators of the Westminster Police Department have contributed substantially to the apprehension of criminals and provision of police services. And whereas each dispatcher has exhibited compassion, understanding, and professionalism during the performance of their job in the past year. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Dr. Becker, Mayor of the City of Westminster, on behalf of the Common Council, does declare the week of April 10th through 16th, 2022 to be National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week in Westminster, in honor of the men and women whose diligence and professionalism keep our city and citizens safe.
All right, thank you very much. Chief, please express our thanks to the folks who do this important work for us over at your department. Our next item is the quarterly progress report from the Mid-Atlantic Gigabit Innovation Collaboratory, better known as MAGIC. We're pleased to have Mr. Graham Dodge with us here once again. Mr. Dodge, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Council President and Council. I apologize for my attire. I am on a rare day off, and so I didn't by no means mean to erode the sanctity of this forum.
Do not feel disrespected.
Thank you. So I have a PDF, right?
Yep, 1 second.
All right.
I saw it in the background before.
It's there. I can just do that once.
Since it's taking a little while, I just want to note the council president told me I could never wear jeans to a council meeting. I just want that on the record.
That's because you sit up here.
There we go.
That's an
That's
audit
not it.
report. There we go.
Right. Okay. Okay, so hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm Graham Dawes. I'm the Executive Director of Magic. This is our third quarter progress report for January through March 2022. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Magic, our strategic position in the community is to serve as a conduit for students and workforce, entrepreneurs and startups, investors and funding, and industry volunteers and mentors through our various programs and education programs for cybersecurity, app development, other technology, workforce development initiatives that helps us output economic development, workforce development, startup acceleration, and angel investing syndication. Our vision for Westminster is encompassed by this hashtag of Silicon Main Street, which is our technology-driven economic development plan for the city. It's meant to reverse the flow of commuters for net positive job growth, increase city revenue, and to create a sandbox infrastructure for technology and innovation to thrive here in Westminster, which will make us more resilient to recessions and pandemics and give us state level recognition and beyond. For the quarterly KPIs that we track for the city, you can see here on this graph, we are now in Q3. If you recall my last quarterly update, I went more into the autonomous corridor project and the budget proposed for that. So I did not provide Q2. So you'll be seeing Q2 as well for the first time in this presentation and in your documents. So for numbers of sponsors participating in special events, we actually had 16 this last quarter. Sponsor event revenue received was $10,750. Stakeholder revenue generated $450, but you can see in the previous quarter, we had almost $21,000 from those stakeholders. And then we have 5 grants submitted in this past quarter. Number of grants awarded were 2. We were awarded $115,000 between the Collert Foundation and the Trump Power Foundation this past quarter. And then multi-year awards were none for this quarter. Number of volunteers from venture capitalists, startups, and tech companies were 13, which is pretty steady with the other numbers from the previous quarters. Number of outreach meetings held within Westminster or with Westminster-based CEOs was 6. Number of outreach meetings held with business CEOs outside of the city of Westminster was 4. Jobs placed within the city was 2. Jobs placed outside the city, 0. Number of conferences, events attended or hosted, 12. Number of conferences, business events attended at which Westminster Fiber Network was promoted was 11. And coverage in local and regional news publications was 5. From this past quarter, we opened our new office at 38 West Main Street, right next to Jeannie Bird Baking Company. We're having our ribbon cutting April 21st, of which you were all invited. We received the $100,000 Gula Tech Foundation grant and the $15,000. Oh, I'm sorry, the previous mention where I said the $150,000, that was Gula Tech Foundation, not Collert Foundation. I apologize. We received funding from the Collert Foundation as well, just wasn't this past quarter. We applied for a $1.1 million State Highway Administration MDOT grant to also enable the digital twin development and to upgrade the intersection 27 in Maine. We received a letter of support for that from Chief Ledford of the Police Department. We applied for an AARP grant to support the Autonomous Corridor project, and we held our Business Risks 2022 conference at Carroll Community College and Old Westminster Winery. And that is a photo from that event. And then what's ahead for next quarter? We have our 12th Capture the Flag Cybersecurity Challenge held at the new Exploration Commons space at the library. We are hosting data care workshops from the grant funding we received from Gula Tech Foundation to offer cybersecurity education for seniors. We call it the Senior Online Safety, or SOS for short. And then also we're partnering with Mike Sheila, if you know Mike Sheila from the community, to offer small business cybersecurity education for small business owners. We're fundraising for a new project. We are calling the Westminster Autonomous Robotics Innovation Center, or ERIC, or ARIC, tomato, tomato, depending on how you want to pronounce it. We are submitting a grant to the Knorr Brake Company for their global care grants to support turning the space behind the antique furniture store. I think it's 31 West Main Street. There used to be an old auto garage next to Stocksdale, into a STEM facility for teaching robotics to students there. And we have letters of support from Carroll County Public Schools and several others for that project as well. And we're doing new board recruitment, as many of Magic's founding board members have now served their maximum term. So you'll see some fresh faces at Magic in the new fiscal year. And that is our third quarter progress report.
All right, very good. Well, thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Dodge?
Mr. President.
Mr. Kavachi?
Mr. Dodge, I apologize. What did you say about Knorr and the STEM at Stocksdale?
So we have, if you stop by our offices, we have this new development kit called Ducky Town. It's a project out of MIT that teaches autonomous robotics to students using all the various computer vision AI techniques. It teaches Python, it teaches Linux, it teaches Docker. And we have a very small scale version of it right now. It's about 6 foot by 10 foot. We can get that to be as big as 20 foot by 40 foot. And so in that context, we would need a much larger space than what we have access to currently. So we've been talking with the Johansson family about that space that's available behind that antique store, the furniture store that used to be an old auto garage.
Yep.
And Knorr Brake has funding roughly the amount that we would be looking for. We've been talking with their global care team about what that looks like. And so we're about to put forth an application for funding, roughly about $70,000 to $80,000 worth of funding that would afford updating that facility slightly, but also to afford all the equipment we need to teach that program.
Great.
And the rent's part of that as well, or?
Correct, yeah, for at least for 1 year.
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. President, I have
Mr. Huff.
one additional question. So Mr. Dodge, on the two grants that you mentioned, the one for 100,000 and the one for 15,000, just can you briefly describe like what those grants are specifically being used for, just out of curiosity?
Sure. The $100,000 grant from Gula Tech Foundation is geared specifically for supporting our cybersecurity education programs, even more specifically our Capture the Flag programs, but also like the new ones for senior online safety and cybersecurity for small businesses. The Trump Tower Foundation is also supporting our cybersecurity education, but a portion of that money was allowed to be used for updating the office and to buy new furniture and to create the facilities to teach those workshops.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, well, thank you. Well, Mr. Dodge, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Exciting stuff continues to happen in Magic, and that's great. And looking forward, I've got to drop by the space and visit. I haven't gotten a chance to slip in there yet, but looking forward to doing that.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank
Enjoy
you.
the rest of your day off.
Enjoy the rest of that. Thank you. Now to a less fun subject.
Wow, what is it?
Wow, I'm very excited about
Well,
that.
thank you. Appreciate that, Tony.
As much as we love being here. It's time for our audit report from our auditors at Brown, Schultz, Sheridan, and Fritz, our certified public accountants and advisors. Thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you. And I have to say, this is our third year performing the audit, but the first time we've been able to be in person for the presentation.
Yes, that's
So
true.
I'm thankful for that. So,
This time around anyway.
right, exactly. All right, so just starting off with required communication. And you were given a letter that details everything, so I'm just going to hit very high points here. The letter goes over our audit responsibilities, so we are auditing your records to make sure that they're fair. And your financial statements include your significant accounting policies. And I will explain that as we go in a little further. You did have to implement 2 new accounting policies this past year. We did provide audit adjustments and there were uncorrected misstatements. They were also provided in your packet of information. However, I'll skip down to the last bullet point, which is the most important point to you. We did issue an unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion, the best opinion that you can receive. As far as your financial statements, there are many significant accounting estimates, including collectability of your taxes, depreciation on your capital assets, accrued compensated absences. The largest one would be related to your net pension and total other post-employment benefits and liabilities associated with that, and the unbilled water and sewer services. As far as significant accounting disclosures in your financial statement packet, you had a capital projects fund that was required to be reported separately this year. So that showed a change in your general fund net position, that part of it slid over to the capital project fund. And that was due to the pool having the bond issue. That's what triggered that.
Oh, okay.
And then also.
Excuse me, would it have just stayed the way it was had we not?
Yes.
Okay.
And I mean, you can always make an election, but you weren't required to
Yes. Okay.
report it separately. And then your long-term debt note describes all of the outstanding debt. During the fiscal year 6/30/21, the city borrowed around $1 million for the pool project. It wasn't received at June 30/21, but you were approved and paid the fees associated with it. And you borrowed an additional $5.9 million for the ENR project and $400,000 for the fiber operations. So as far as the accounting standards that I mentioned that you had to implement, so it's these 2 that were mentioned here, but what impacted the city was actually for the police department, the non-adjudicated funds no longer are reported in the general fund. They're now considered a custodial fund. So you have separate financial statements related just to those funds. And we're actually talking about a small amount of money that was outstanding at June 30th. It was only $7,304, but still required to be reported separately nonetheless. And then the other thing that was evaluated through looking at the fiduciary funds related to your defined contribution plans that you offer. And it's trying to get governments to report these things consistently. So there was no change for the city. It's still just a disclosure for you. It's not an actual fund in your financial statements. Upcoming standards, you have leases that will need to be evaluated, and that needs to actually happen this year in the current period, because that will be effective in your next financial statement as of June 30/23. And you also have conduit debt obligations. That's another year out, but you already disclosed your conduit debt obligation, so I don't expect any changes with that one.
Can I ask a quick question before you go on that slide?
Oh, sure.
The leases, is that leases that we hold or leases that we're leasing out? Are we the leaseor or the leasee?
It's the one when you're leasing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then I skipped a slide, I believe. And that was really just saying the audit objectives, which we've already discussed at a high level. So I'll just stay here. So this is your government-wide statement of net position. This is on the accrual basis. So this is full accrual. So this is not what you would see in your monthly statements. So we have the governmental activities, business type activities, and then your total. So in total, your current assets, you can see we're a little over $52 million, of which 40 million of that relates to in cash and investments. And I have a slide to show you that a little bit later. But certainly you can see the net capital assets over 182 million. That's where the city is investing the infrastructure and equipment that you have. So all in all, the total assets and deferred outflows, 240 million. Then you have some current liabilities. The non-current liabilities and deferred inflows, that total 62,817,000. 40 million of that is outstanding debt. And then 14 million is your pension liability. And 4.6 million relates to the other post-employment benefits that are offered. So your net position there is a little over 170 million in total. And of that, 24 million was unrestricted as of June 30th. And that just is giving you a visual of your cash balances as of June 30th for the 3 years, and just pointing out what you see in the capital projects fund used to be in the general fund. So it's pulled out there.
Mhm.
All right, so then as far as the governmental funds, the operating results, this is showing you the 21 section that you have 3 columns as opposed to 2020 when there was only 2. That's because the capital projects fund is new this year as far as being presented as a separate fund. The top line, the taxes. There was a 491,000 increase in your real estate taxes. And that was due to an increased assessment value of the property, which was roughly 4%. And then the next line, the grants and revenues from other governments, just point out the public housing fund had an increase of 247,000 related to just those in the community basically needing more assistance. And then also the city received 86,000 more in administrative funds from HUD. And also you used 52,000 of CARES Act money in the public housing to assist with payroll. The other revenues line, just want to point out, you can see that there was a decrease there, and that was primarily in your charges for services. And that really is directly related to COVID and the impact of not having Fall Fest, and then also, decrease in, there was also a 213,000 decrease in construction inspection fees. Last year was a larger year with a couple of developments. Right. And then the other thing I wanted to point out, your capital outlays, you can see that there was, most of it's in the capital project fund, 5.6 million. So it just depends on timing of your projects, but for the general fund, the biggest expense, capital outlay, was the 2.8 million that you spent on your administrative building, wrapping that up. The sale of the capital assets this year, 452,775, 430,000 of that related to the sale of the West End School. So all in all, for your change in your funds, the general fund had a negative almost 600,000. Capital projects fund had a negative 317,000, and the public housing had a positive 70,852. That's just giving you a visual of what we already discussed. You can see that the breakdown is fairly consistent year to year. And then this is the expense breakdown. And generally speaking, all of them, when you're looking at the changes, except for debt service and capital outlay, the biggest change related to payroll. So then we have your proprietary funds, and the first line there is your operating revenue, your sewer and water increases related to a fee rate increase. And then fiber did have 75,000 additional revenue related to subscribers. And then just point out a couple other things. Your towards the bottom there, capital contributions, that's a large number, obviously, in your financial statements, particularly in the sewer. You can see that 16 million of that number, 15.6 million relates to your ENR project. So a lot of resources being spent there, but the revenue there, but the asset gets recorded on your balance sheet. In those capital contribution lines, it also includes the Stonegate development, about 400,000 in both the water and sewer funds for capital that the city took over when the phase of the development was considered final. So all in all, the sewer fund had a change in that position of a little over 18 million. And the water had a positive 1.8 million, but again, you can see a lot of that relates to those capital contributions we talked about. The fiber fund, you can see that the interfund transfer of 205,000, that is money that the general fund put into the fiber fund. So the fiber fund is, still continuing not being able to generate enough revenue or cash even to cover operations at this point. But there was an improvement, a smaller loss.
Right. Which was expected.
Yes. Again, just a visual there. And you can see the increase in the capital contributions, and that really is all the project, the ENR. So then I'm going to move into the findings related to the audit. And so they're in different categories: material weakness, significant deficiency. So material weakness, you have the definitions there. I'm not going to read them to you. And it's broken down into financial statement findings. So we'll go over those first. So on this slide, the findings that were considered material weaknesses. The first one was fiscal year end reporting, that there were material journal entries that were provided by us that were not properly identified by the Director of Finance. The federal awards schedule, that's what you are required to file. That lists out all of your federal spending. That schedule was not correct. It was inaccurate and incomplete. And then also related to your capital assets, there were problems with the report itself as far as what was included on there, the construction and progress schedules, as well as like the West End building wasn't disposed of, and gains and losses. And then also we identified several unrecorded grant receivables. And in your financial statements, obviously you have more detail and our recommendations, and Sarah has written a response for improvement for all of these things. So then there were two findings related to the financial statement that were considered significant deficiencies. One related to the Port End Housing Assistant Payment Vouchers. The voucher payments reported in that housing fund was misclassified between the city's vouchers and portable vouchers. And that would impact your REAC filing that has to be done every year. Mm-hmm. And then there were also some discrepancies in an inventory related to the fiber fund. And then as far as the housing fund, which was the major program that was audited for the federal, for the single audit, we had two findings there. One was a material weakness and one was significant deficiencies. Both of these are repeat findings. So the material weakness relates to the VMS reports were inaccurate and not corrected timely. And also the unaudited financial information was not filed timely. And then as far as significant deficiency, administrative costs were charged to the housing agency using allocations that were not documented and weren't consistent. And then there was just a general comment as far as improvement needed for prepaids around licenses. That is a very quick overview of your financial statements, which you have a very thick packet there. So
Thank you.
any questions?
Thank you very much, Ms. Lynn, and I certainly look forward to reading through the reports. And as always, you and your colleagues have done a very thorough job. And we appreciate the detail that you go into, as well as, that you share these findings with us, in a thoughtful way. And, obviously, we always want to strive to not have them, but when we do have them, we appreciate that you share them with us and we have the opportunity to then fix these things.
Absolutely.
Do any of my colleagues have any questions for Ms. Lynn? We'll have a chance to read through these, and then if you have any questions to follow up later, we certainly can get them to her.
Yeah, we need to digest this.
Yeah.
There's a lot, it's certainly a lot of information.
Available anytime, so
Right.
don't hesitate to reach out.
Great, thank you. Ms. Imhoff, did you want to comment on the findings?
Sure, happy to. I mean, it's not happy, but I'm happy to comment. Most of the root cause behind these findings have to do with turnover in key staff positions in the city over the last 2 years. It's my commitment to work as hard as possible to correct these items. The solution for the most part would be a change in protocol and procedures. And we have a very short period of time to address these. There's only 2.5 months left to the end of the fiscal year, when we'll be back again with the auditors. But I think that we can make the adjustments necessary, and we have been along the way in this fiscal year. The auditors are always looking a year behind us, right? So I'm confident that we will get to a place where there will be less than 8 findings, and it's my goal that we'll get to a place where there are no findings. So fingers crossed there. And we really appreciate working with the auditors, and we feel our other goal is to get the audit complete next year by the initial deadline, which is in December. Of course, the city had received several extensions in our audit in order to make sure we could complete it in a timely fashion. But we're working hard to make those changes, and I'm confident that we will.
Right, well, thank you. And I note that we are still without a full-time finance director, unfortunately, but I know we're working hard to try and fill that, and that's certainly a handicap.
It isn't.
But nonetheless, I know that the finance team is working hard to.
We are. This is a good time to remind everyone that we're still accepting applications for the position of finance director. We've got a lot of really exciting things to work on. I know this sounds like potentially boring information for some of you, but for those of us that really like to get into it and solve problems and make a huge difference in the city, this is a position where someone with the right skill set and the right knowledge really would be able to make a huge difference. And would work for a really great team. So if you know of anyone who's looking to switch organizations, we'll be happy to look at them.
Very good, thank you.
Why are you looking over at the county guys?
Right. Ms. Lynn, thank you again, and thank you, colleagues. I
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
Mr. President,
Mr. Dayhoff.
looking at the corrective action plan 96 and 99, it's very thoughtful and it addresses Ms. Lynn's concerns, I think, very well. Gives us a great opportunity. So it's one thing to have a finding, but it's good that we responded well. Thank you.
Having confidence.
I do too.
I appreciate it.
I do too. I've read countless reports like this, countless, and that I was happy with the corrective action plan.
Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. We have one item. We have a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Dayhoff. Is there a second?
Second.
And second by Mr. Cavacci. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. The ayes seem to have it, and the ayes have it. The consent calendar is approved. Of course, the mayor is not with us tonight, so we will look forward to a lengthy report from her at the next meeting. I will note that she was present at the Easter egg event on Saturday at Wakefield Valley. It looked like fun from the pictures I saw. Sorry, I wasn't able to be there, but we always appreciate the mayor showing up. I also couldn't resist sharing my new copy of Carroll Magazine, which has our mayor and some other mayor on the cover.
Some other.
Some other mayor.
Other mayor.
We like Mayor Ling from Sykesville very much. I'm just kidding. But we're always pleased to see our mayor go in print there. So it's a nice article. If anybody hasn't read it yet, I encourage them to, everybody to do so. So thanks to Carroll Magazine for the feature. Move on to reports from standing committees. We'll begin, as we always do, with our Arts Council liaison, Mr. Dayhoff.
And the mayor made an excellent presentation at President Jaskin's investiture.
She did indeed.
She made us all proud. I think the only thing with the Arts Council report is the 15th annual Peep Show is in full swing over at the Westminster Town Mall. I like the description, hundreds of wacky marshmallow masterpieces created by local artists, families, businesses. I didn't have a chance to go in. I stopped over to go in the other day, but I didn't have a chance. I had some other responsibilities, but I'm really looking forward to going. I encourage everyone to go. Brings an awful lot of people to town. And that'll be my report, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dayhoff. Move on to Economic and Community Development Committee, Mr. Huff.
Mr. President, we had our meeting on Wednesday, March 30th at 3:30 p.m. We discussed several items, several of which are on the agenda tonight, being the text amendment and the 2 annexations that we're going to be discussing. We also got an update on the sign ordinance process. That ordinance is being slowly rewritten. So at some point this year, we'll probably see that. That's in a committee structure, and progress is being made on that. And we also discussed moving forward with a downtown parking study, and that's in the works as well. And then our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, April the 28th at 3:30 p.m. at 45 West Main Street. And that's it, sir.
All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Huff. On behalf of the Finance Committee, I will share that we had a meeting, I think the 31st was after our last council meeting. So good meeting with the city administrator, preliminary discussion of some important budget items, which are still being worked through. And yeah, we are looking forward to a meeting. I'm trying to schedule one in the next week or so. I think week after maybe to begin going through some of the budget items from the city administrator. She was still working on trying to finalize a solid revenue estimate, amongst other things, so we can make start making some of the big decisions. But we intend to stay on track to have the budget to you in the time that we had said, and to hold to those full council work sessions and discussions on that. So we'll keep to that track. Personnel Committee, Ms. Gilbert. Thank you. Public Safety Committee, Mr. Cavacci.
Yes, thanks, Mr. President. Have a number of items. On March 30th, we had a lateral police officer join the department, and he'll be starting in April. His name is Jamil Lee. Is that right? How you pronounce that, Chief? On the first, we swore in 2 new police officers, Jonathan Ray and Cynthia Hall. We then again swore in another police officer, Rojas, a week later. What is his first name? William Rojas. We had one of our police officers that was on National Guard deployment return to service, Lucas Eli. So that's great to have him back. Chief has been hosting his community focus group meetings. He had one virtually. He can go into more detail about what they talked about if he wants to under his report. And a reminder that the department's going to host their annual award ceremony on April 26th at 9 a.m. At the Best Western Conference Center. And then two last things I wanted to touch on, and I'm glad that the state's attorney's here because I wanted to thank him on behalf of the city. You guys did some great work along with our department and the state and the sheriff's department and federal agencies on these significant arrests that took place and warrants that were served. And we're incredibly grateful for that and the work that you did to help make those happen and working closely with the chief and the other departments. And it looks like Gaines, which was one of the ringleaders, was caught a week or so ago. So that's wonderful news. The task force continue to work hard. Our police department, the sheriff's department working together on the drug and gun task force. And I know they're working very hard to continue to make important, arrests and serve warrants. So please, Chief, keep up the good work. And State's Attorney, thank you very much for everything that you're doing to help,
Thank you.
keep things safe here in the city.
It was a great collaborative effort. I know the chief, they put a lot of work into it. We certainly appreciate their support.
Yes, sir. That's all I have for public safety.
Thank you. Mr. Culver, anything you'd like to add to that, by the way?
Yeah, I just, it's one of those things where this is something that it's ongoing, people don't realize a lot. What's going on in the community, all these investigations, we love to talk about them, but if we talk about them, then they're not effective. So it's just nice to finally see kind of the results come through with all the hard work, all the hours law enforcement put into them. So it was a great combined effort.
And our citizens notice it. I will tell you, I have had numerous people comment to me that they saw what was happening. They've heard that folks that we don't want in the community have been taken out of the community. So it's not going unnoticed. And I, for one, make sure that, of course, I first and foremost compliment our police department, but also try to make sure to let them know that there are other agencies involved in this, including yours.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I'd like to continue with Public Works, Mr. Kavachi.
I would, Mr. President. So paving on Longwell Distillery and the Longwell surface lot is completed. Great work. And the key lot looks like that got wrapped up. They were leaf blowing on it today, I hear. So that's wonderful. They're moving over to Furnace Hills area likely next week. Center Street storm drain outfall repair is scheduled for mid-April. Material availability is controlling the construction start, just like it's controlling tons of things in everybody's businesses. I know it sure is in mine. And then the City Hall roof repair is mostly wrapped up at this point, so that's good. And I&I lining is beginning on Sunflower Court. Lining and repair materials for other sections has been ordered, but I'm sure we'll probably run into some challenges with that as well. But I'll tell you, the I&I work does tremendous. The return on investment for that is significant, and we're really seeing some great results in that work. So keep up the good work for another 2 months or so.
Thank you, Mr. Kavachi. Recreation and Parks, Mr. Dayhoff.
I didn't make it to the Easter egg hunt, but by all reports, it was a great event. As a matter of fact, my colleague ought to make that report because apparently you had a great time.
I had a great time, yes.
And Nolan had a great time.
Yep. So, and it is part of my council comments. So if you like, I can do them now, but not the council comments, just part on the trip.
So I think you should.
So yeah, one of the events that the Parks and Rec department held was the traditional egg hunt, and it was at Wakefield Valley this year. Along with that, Miss Gruber and her entire team did not only did the egg hunt, but did a bunny path. And the kids had to walk around a little trail, and there were stations. By the time you ended up with the station, you had a complete egg garden, and donations were from the Random House. So everybody got either a hardback book, activity book. It was a really nice event, and to note, it was free. So they just put together a wonderful event for the morning, despite the cold, chilly weather. It was great.
Okay. Well, I'm glad it was a good time. And thank you. Move on now to, let's see, the last one is the Technology Committee, nothing to report there. So move on to council comments and discussion, where council members get the opportunity to mention anything else that is on their minds that is not on the agenda elsewhere or in their committee report. Mr. Kavachi?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. President. I don't, you just get to go first, so that's great. And I will be
Change
brief. I just wanted to comment how much I enjoyed some of the things up at McDaniel. The reception was wonderful. The fireworks were awesome. My granddaughter loved them. She's 20 months old, so it's the first time she's really kind of been able, last when she saw them when she was little, she didn't get it, but she really enjoyed it. They were great too. And I think you guys probably condensed it just a little because you were trying to get them in, but it made it really awesome. Lots of yellow and green fireworks, I noticed. It was heavily weighted to those colors, but it was really great. So it was very enjoyable. That's all I have, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. Mr. Dayhoff?
The events at the college were simply wonderful. And Father Mark got some great pictures of the fireworks with the water tower in the background. And hopefully Aaron, how do I pronounce Aaron's last name? Benvenuto? Benevento. Okay, well, we tried to link up Aaron and Father Mark together to get those pictures. And then it was a privilege to attend the celebration of life for Westminster Police Department Chaplain Wayne Godot. The chief and I went along with firefighter Victoria Ledwell and my wife, firefighter Caroline. We went to the Crossroads Church yesterday for that service, and it was a very meaningful and a very moving service. Very fitting farewell to someone who worked extremely hard for our community. I think that's my report, Mr. Oh, no, there's one more thing. I want to shout out to Council Member Huff for all his hard work on the highway user revenue. It's a lot of work. You were on the legislative committee. I was on the legislative committee for several years. It's a lot of work. I take my hat off to you.
Thank you.
Council member. I really appreciate the work, and we're going to look forward to those revenues. That's my report, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gilbert?
I'm going to also mention the celebration at McDaniel College. It was absolutely wonderful. To a twist, being an alumni, I thoroughly enjoyed going back to the school and seeing some of the spots where students you hang out, and they're now just updated and brand new, fresh facility. It just looked amazing. So I'm looking forward to the collaboration we're all going to have together. Talked about the egg hunt. Community focus group led by Deputy Chief Gibson met on April 6th at 7:00 via Zoom. The major topic of that was an opioid update for 2022 with Debbie Finch being the guest speaker. Just to sum it up, there were discussed were some strategies the health department is making to address the uptick in the overdose deaths. Just as information, 46 deaths were reported in 2020, and in 2021, there were 60. Of the 46 in 2020, 43 were the results of opioids, just as some basic information. There's also a new quick response team being made up of 5 folks, and Chief, tell me if I'm saying anything wrong or incorrect, but I think I've got some of the notes pretty accurate. 5 folks that will be responding to overdoses and dual diagnosis issues, along with multiple other strategies like education, safe disposal of unused meds, increasing training for naloxone, and the health department, just as information, has free Detero bags for safe medicine disposal, and you dump your drugs in the bags. There's chemicals in the bags, and then you can throw them in I believe you can throw them in your trash. Is that correct? Yes. Yeah. The next opioid prevention meeting is May 11th at the Carroll County Public Safety Center, and it is open to the public, so anybody can join in at the meeting. As far as the community focus group, if anybody has any concerns, please reach out to Chief Gibson. Chief, do you have anything to add, or do you want to wait till your report?
Well, it's just that the statistics are county-wide statistics. They're not just.
Not just city. Yeah. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Mr. Hoff?
Thank you, Council President. As Chair of Economic and Community Development, I certainly look forward to a closer relationship working with McDaniel to continue to improve our downtown. It'll be mutually beneficial to all of us if we have a closer working relationship. And I wanted to bring you all up to date on a couple things. I actually spoke to Senator Reedy this morning, and I have some official good news. I think pretty much official good news at this point. Number one, the governor's capital budget that late last week passed both chambers and is now sitting on the governor's desk. And no one slashed through our $1 million allocation for Wakefield Valley, and no one slashed through our 200,000 allocation for the clock tower. So as you know, we've been working on this for months, and we thought everything would be fine. I would say it's pretty much as good as it's going to get. Basically, all that has to happen at this point is the governor's got to sign the document.
You'd like to think he's going to sign his own budget.
You would think he would sign his own proposed budget, yes. So basically, I am thrilled. And I want to once again, thank the delegation for their assistance with that. They have been very helpful throughout the process. Delegate Shoemaker, Krebs, and Delegate Rose. And particularly in all frankness, Senator Reedy was incredibly helpful throughout the entire process. And he is the gentleman that I had the most contact on a pretty regular basis regarding this matter. We'll leave it like that. So again, I have a lot of appreciation, and I have already prepared our friends on the delegation, and hopefully, whichever new friends come along, that I plan on continuing to ask for help and support for the city of Westminster. It's important that we do this. And then I want to talk a little bit about highway user revenue bill. Just to refresh everybody's memory, that was a legislative priority for MML. Currently, just to refresh everybody's memory, municipalities in fiscal year 23 will get 2% of that money. In fiscal year 24, they would get 2%. And then in fiscal year 25 on, this is the current law, it would only be 0.4%, which would have a significant impact on us. Right now, we're anticipating at that 2% number would be 845,000 roughly for fiscal year 23. You can imagine if we get to a few years out and that goes down to 0.4, what that would do to that number. MML's been, worked to submit a bill to improve that result. When it was in the House chamber, it kind of got a little bit messed with in committee and was not as attractive as what MML was hoping for. But then recently, over the past 2 weeks, leadership, General Assembly leadership, as well as the governor, got involved and proposed something that, and I shared it in an email with you all, that I think everybody from MML's standpoint is really excited about, which would increase for fiscal year 23 would remain the same at 2%, but fiscal year 24 would be 2.4%, fiscal year 25 would be 2.7%. And mind you, under current law, it would not be 2.7, it would be 0.4. For fiscal year 26, it would be 3%. For fiscal year 27, it would be 3%. And then from fiscal year 28 onward, it would be 2.4%, but no sunset. The fact that there's no sunset, that we don't have to revisit the percentage down the road, it is great. Where we are with that right now, it passed the Senate on Saturday. It's supposed to be passing the House today. I have several people that are supposed to be texting me once it passes. It has not passed yet. By midnight, I have no reason to suspect it won't. But again, this is something that'll be very beneficial to us. For instance, for Westminster's allocation, as it goes up to 3%, instead of 845,000, that would translate to 1,141,000. And again, the fact that there's no sunset there is critical. So fingers crossed, I could get a text in the middle of the meeting telling me that it has passed through the House. So hopefully it will. But one thing I do want to mention, just big picture wise, it's one thing with the highway user revenues that at some point will probably be revisited within the next several years is as we kind of move as a society away from, gasoline vehicles and more electric vehicles, I think there'll at some point in time be a different way of looking at how that money is generated. I don't think that's going to happen immediately, but I would say, 10 years out, the formulas, from what I'm being told by MML, are going to eventually have to be changed because that pot is going to slowly dwindle because the highway user revenues is so tied to the gas tax and all those things. So, but that's a story for another day. The end result is, so far so good. I am thrilled about the results of the capital budget. Again, very appreciative of our delegation, appreciative of the work that the staff did to help with the presentations. And hopefully we can continue to work with the state and with our elected officials to help bring money back to the city of Westminster to help us with these important projects that serve our citizens. So that's my update tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hoff. I'll just briefly add my appreciation to McDaniel College for including so many community residents in the inaugural celebration. And in particular, I just want to comment on Dr. Jaskin's commitment to be more engaged in the community. And this is something I think is very exciting for all of us. She sounds like she is committed to making Westminster a true college town, which I think is something that we've all hoped for many years and think is an exciting prospect. She's already done a lot, in that direction, just in the few months that she's been in office. I think we've had more engagement, out of her than we had collectively from all of her predecessors. So that's very exciting. And I know that she's got a lot of other initiatives going on, which are exciting as well. But for me, this is one that, of course, makes a huge difference for the community. And, we appreciate it. Reciprocating and working as closely as we can to make that successful. So from that, we'll move on to our next item, which is ordinances and resolutions. First one is introduction of ordinance number 941, fiscal year 2022 budget amendment number 2. An ordinance of the mayor and common council of Westminster, Maryland, amending the adopted budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2022. And on that, we'll turn to our city administrator.
Thank you, sir. The city's fiscal year commenced on July 1st, 2021, in accordance with Article 2 of the chapter of the City of Westminster. Maybe that's supposed to say chapter of the Code of the City of Westminster. The city administrator prepared a proposed budget on behalf of the mayor and common council's consideration. Ordinance 9835 was adopted on May 10th, 2021. Ordinance 940, fiscal year 22 budget amendment number 1 was adopted on November 8th, 2021. During this current year, it has become apparent that the city has incurred or will incur expenses exceeding current appropriation, and therefore additional appropriations have and are necessary. A summary of those proposed additions are as follows. From the general fund, police department increased by $91,000 to accommodate $68,000 for training system and $23,000 for approximately $23,000 for IA Pro software, which is in response to the state of Maryland recent requirements.
Unfunded mandate.
Unfunded mandate.
It's an unfunded, yeah.
Those funds are being proposed to be taken out of ARPA. The transfer of $91,000 from ARPA to the general fund in the police department. In the CIP fund, the public works CIP line for the ENR project increased by $200,000, which funds change order number 1 that was adopted 2 weeks ago, funded by a $200,000 transfer from the sewer fund reserves. As I mentioned, this change order was authorized by the mayor and council in March of 2022. And in the Recreation and Parks Department, we adopted the pool project, but didn't necessarily move the money into the CIP fund to cover that. Those funds, as we've already mentioned in the adoption, will come from ARPA. That's $2,259,039. This contract was authorized by the mayor and council in November 2021. Staff recommends that the mayor and common council introduce the amended budget appropriations as detailed in ordinance 941. These police items have been through the Public Safety Committee. They are cheaper if we buy them this year. If we wait until the next fiscal year, which we certainly could do, they will be more expensive. And furthermore, the training system, while this particular training system isn't required, the training that can come out of this training system is part of the requirements of the state law that goes into effect July 1. So we're doing two things right now. One is to increase the police budget to address those items we just mentioned. The second is to clean up, if you will, the housekeeping side of things for projects that have already been adopted by mayor and council. You need to read the ordinance?
No. All right, thank you very much. And let me say thanks to Zim Holtz for this practice of bringing us nice, neat budget amendments. They're easier to track
Yeah, they
and
are.
follow, so appreciate that very much. We have a motion to, and this is for introduction.
I'll move to introduce 941, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr.
Awesome.
Kavachi. Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion by Mr. Kavachi and a second by Ms. Gilbert to introduce ordinance number 941.
I have
Any
one
further
question.
discussion? Yes, Mr. Hoff.
Sorry. Ms. M. Holtz, just to clarify, I think you and I briefly discussed it, but just for clarity's sake, for the IA software, the total that we're putting in there is $23,100. And when I looked at the proposal, it appears on page 28 of the packet. Well, when you look at the proposal, the software itself is 15,600. But there is a item for the public portal side that is 7,500, and I'm assuming that is in that number of the 23,100. But that is just for clarity of everybody, because I know there was some confusion between when we met with public safety and now. The recurring expense that we're going to have related to this quote unfunded mandate is $3,000. Once we do this initial capital outlay, is $3,000 a year, correct, for the internal side, but the public portal side is $7,500. Is that correct? And is that every year or every 2 years? I think you said you were going to check on that.
It is every year. It starts the second year. Is that correct?
The $3,000 maintenance for the internal software system starts at year 2. So it's inclusive for the first year. And the 7,500, the public portal, which is the crux of the Maryland legislative requirements, is 7,500 a year. So it would be 7,500 this year and then each year following.
Okay, so the reality is we're going to, once we do this initial outlay, we're going to have the 3,000 on the one side, but also the additional 7,500. So the reality is 10,500 a year that it's going to be costing us because of basically an unfunded mandate.
That's correct.
Right. Okay. I just want that to be clear for the viewing audience and for all of us. Okay, Mr. President, that was all. I just wanted to have clarity on that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hoff. Any further questions or any discussion? Hearing none, move on to a vote. All those in favor of introduction of ordinance number 941, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes seem to have it, the ayes have it. And we'll bring this back to the next meeting.
Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Next item is introduction of annexation resolution 22-02, which is annexation number 74. Enlarging the corporate boundaries of the city of Westminster by annexing into the city certain property contiguous and adjoining to the city's existing corporate boundaries, consisting of the real property located at 207 Greenwood Avenue, Westminster, Maryland, 21157, and 209 Greenwood Avenue, Westminster, Maryland, 21157. Also identified as tax account number 07-053843, map 107, grid 0004, parcel 1138, and comprising plus or minus 21,359 square feet. May I have a motion for introduction?
Mr. President, I'll make a motion for introduction.
There's been a motion by Mr. Hoff for introduction. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second by Mr. Dayhoff. Turn to Planning Director Mark Depot for some explanation.
Thank you, President Pecoraro, and good evening to you and council members. The Board of County Commissioners, the property owner of 207 and 209 Greenwood Avenue, and the petitioner has petitioned the Mayor and Common Council to annex a portion of 207 and 209 Greenwood Avenue into the corporate boundaries of the city of Westminster. The subject property is Zone C2 Commercial Medium Density under the Carroll County zoning ordinance and B Business Zone under the City of Westminster zoning ordinance. The petitioner is requesting that the portion of the subject property Zone C2 under the county zoning ordinance be zoned to B Business Zone under the city zoning ordinance. So essentially the whole property would therefore be B Business Zone. The petitioner intends to raise the existing buildings on the subject property and construct a new 43,000 square feet, 3-story office building for the state attorney. And this use is a permitted use in the B Business Zone. The annexation petition submitted by the petitioner meets the requirements in the annotated code of Maryland and City of Westminster zoning ordinance section 164.6. Staff recommends that the Mayor and Common Council move to introduce resolution number 2202 for annexation, allowing the annexation process to begin. That completes my report, and I'm available for any questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Depot. And of course, that process includes forwarding the annexation petition and the resolution to the county for their action on this as well.
Yes.
All right, very good. Thank you. All right, we have a motion. Any questions for Mr. Depot or any discussion on the
Mr. President.
Mr. Hoff?
I just have a comment and I guess as Chair of Economic and Community Development, and again, I just want to share this for the viewing public. I mean, obviously, we have to make this happen. The state's attorney needs a new building. But I want to stress that, you know, at times, this is can be really difficult for the city of Westminster because of water allocation issues. And I know that we spent a lot of time in our committee playing with charts and moving water from here to there to kind of make this work for this particular project. And I'll be frank, you know, there are some projects where we have people have come to economic and community development where we haven't been able to say yes because of water allocation issues. So I just want to again kind of remind everybody in the viewing public, obviously this has to happen, and we're trying to make other, but we're also really trying to make some other economic development stuff happening, and that water is just really critical. I know we have things in the works to try to resolve this issue, so hopefully we can. But it's just really important that you know we continue to work on trying to get more water availability for the city of Westminster. That's all I just wanted to mention.
Thank you, Mr. Hoff.
Mr. President.
Mr. Kavachi.
So is it both buildings, the old Bear advertising building and the garage building that's next to it? That's both those pieces of property.
Those two small buildings right at the corner.
That's going to be nice because they're pretty ugly.
Anyone else wish to be heard? All right, if hearing no one, we'll move on to a vote. All those in favor of introducing the annexation resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. The ayes seem to have it, the ayes have it. And it is introduced and will be referred on appropriately under the code.
Thank you.
Next item is introduction of annexation resolution 2203, annexation number 73, enlarging the corporate boundaries of the city of Westminster by annexing into the city certain property contiguous and adjoining to the city's existing corporate boundaries, consisting of the real property located at 404 Malcolm Drive, Westminster, Maryland 21157, also identified as tax account number 07-000588, MAC 46, grid 009, parcel 1187, and comprising plus or minus 3.81 square feet. Mr.
Correct me up on that.
Thank you, President Pecoraro. Main Street 3 LLC, the property owner of 404 Malcolm Drive, and the petitioner has petitioned the Mayor and Common Council to annex 404 Malcolm Drive into the corporate boundaries of the city of Westminster. The subject property is approximately 3.8019 acres in size and Zone C2 Commercial Medium Intensity District under the Carroll County zoning ordinance. The petitioner is requesting that the property be zoned a B business zone under the City of Westminster zoning ordinance. The petitioner intends to raise the existing building on the property and construct a new 40,000 square feet, two-story medical office building. This use also is permitted in the B business zone. The annexation petition submitted by the petitioner meets the requirements in the annotated code of Maryland and the City of Westminster zoning ordinance section 164-6. Staff recommends that the mayor and common council move to introduce resolution 2203 for annexation, allowing the annexation process to begin. And that completes my report. I'm available for any questions.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Depot or any discussion on this item?
Well, Mr. President,
Mr.
I'll go ahead and make the motion, but we're going to need to make a correction because it says 3.81 square feet. And when I read that, I'm thinking we're annexing 3 square feet of space. So we need to correct the language in the ordinance to be
We did say that.
3.81 square acres.
We did.
Yes.
All right,
So I'll move to introduce resolution 2203 with the correction of feet to acres.
And I'll second it as amended.
All right, without objection, the change is so ordered. All right. But any further discussion on this? Any other questions?
Mr. President, I would just say this is fantastic. I mean, this is this is what we want to see. This is a piece of property that's going to generate both opportunities for business as well as additional tax revenue.
Amen.
Absolutely.
Mr. President,
Mr. Dayhoff, rather, I'm sorry.
I'm looking at the tax map. There's 2 nice properties beside it. Have we discussed annexation with those 2 folks?
No, we have not, but there's always hope.
Yeah, I think we should.
They need a compelling reason. These guys have a reason.
Well, that's a true story, but okay.
Well, other adjoining property owners may find themselves in similar need at some point, and I think we'll certainly be ready to entertain their petitions if that comes to pass.
Well, this is all good stuff. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Depot. I'm glad we changed it from feet to acres.
That helps.
I loved it.
Anyone else? Hearing no one else, we'll move on to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. That seem to have it, the ayes have it. And annexation resolution is introduced, and we will start on its way in the process. The final item here is introduction of ordinance number 942, an ordinance amending chapter 164, zoning and subdivision of land of the Code of the City of Westminster to amend Article 12, subsection D, 5A, to add microbreweries and pub breweries licensed under Article 2B of the Annotated Code of Maryland, and to amend Article 20, special provisions, to add section 164-155.6, microbreweries and pub breweries, to provide new standards for the grant of microbreweries and pub breweries in certain zones. Before we get ahead of ourselves again, let's get a motion for introduction. May I have a motion?
Mr. President, I'll make a motion for introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Haas. There's a motion for introduction. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Dayhoff. Thank you. All right, Mr. Depot.
Thank you, President. So currently, microbreweries and pub breweries is not a listed use in the PI zoning district. It is, however, a special exception use to the mixed use infill, CC, NC, CB, and DB district. At the January 20th, 2021 committee, Economic Development and Committee meeting, staff introduced draft text to add new microbreweries and pub breweries in as a permitted use in the PI planned industrial zone, subject to special provisions, and to add the new microbreweries and pub breweries special provisions. The committee reviewed the draft text amendment and recommended the draft text be amended to allow for mobile food trucks to operate at the microbreweries and pub breweries, which today is not permitted. At the March 30th, 2022 committee meeting, staff provided the revised draft text, which did allow for mobile food trucks subject to certain conditions, including limitations to the hours of operation and the number of times a food truck may be located at a property. The committee recommended that a revision to the draft text be allowed for the mobile food trucks to extend these time limitations administratively. The draft text before the mayor and common council tonight has been amended whereby the zoning administrator may, upon written request of the property owner, extend these time periods. So again, this would allow the food trucks to be located longer on a specific property. The committee supported the revised draft text amendment subject to this revision and recommended staff introduce such draft text to the mayor and common council. Therefore, staff recommends that proposed ordinance number 942 as introduced for consideration to the mayor and common council on April 11th, 2022, be referred to the Planning and Zoning Commission for its review and recommendation to the mayor and common council. That completes my report. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Depot. Are there any questions for Mr. Depot or any comments on the ordinance?
Mr. President.
Mr. Kovacs?
So, Mr. Depot, this says, it specifically talks about breweries. What about distilleries? Like Covalent Spirits that's going in on Main Street?
So a micro distillery or winery would be the same use. So it was determined when Covalent Spirits came in, it's similar to and like the microbrewery and pub brewery, so therefore it is the same.
Okay,
And we had asked that question in the committee meeting.
okay, good.
Question.
The hope would be, I'm sorry, the hope would be when we get the zoning ordinance, we would come up with a more generic, maybe a craft beverage type of use that is all encompassing.
And that's my concern is that you know that now, but 3 years from now, you may have moved on and most of us might not even be here and remember that. And somebody's going to come and say, well, I'm sorry, this is only for beer, not for wine or spirits. And I think we want it to be for all of those things. So I think that's good. We craft the language a little bit differently, so it's a little more all encompassing. Then secondly, Mr. President, if I can continue.
Well, before you move on,
Yeah.
and I think, it's a good point, and I think, the legislative intent ought to reflect that, and I think, we can ask the city clerk to make sure that the minutes reflect that.
That would be good.
That's a good point.
Thank you, Mr. President. The second thing is on the food truck frequency. Because I do like the fact that we want to limit it a little bit because we want to be careful with, constantly competing with our other more permanent establishments. What's it's probably in here. And while I did read this over a little bit, what you said you're going to this will allow you some discretion in terms of hours, but what about that frequency? And what is that frequency?
It's both. Right now, it allows for 9 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Mhm.
2 times in any given week. And it's at that specific property. So the thought was, what if there was an event or something that extended beyond 2 days?
Mhm.
They could write a request with good cause, request that extension. And typically would go if there was an extended event, obviously. But typically mobile food trucks you will see at these locations on a Friday and Saturday. It's even the 2 days is fairly consistent with what you have, and there's high turnover. One truck is there Friday, another truck is there Saturday, a different truck is there Sunday. So it would allow for that. But that written request could come through administratively, and again, for good cause, be extended.
Thank you.
And we discussed that very point in the committee meeting, and
It's like I was listening in.
I know.
I was not.
We should have had you there, Mr. Kovacs, but we discussed that, and the idea was that, for example, speaking of somebody like Covalent, which, we do want to encompass in this, and I know that, the owner of that property plans to have, in conjunction with city festivals, this kind of activity there, taking place, and, if it were a 3-day event like Fall Fest or something like that, if they had an arrangement with a particular vendor that they wanted to sort of have the same thing for over the course of the 3 days, they'd be able to do that, by making the appropriate application to the city.
And it is important that they have these because the weird way the laws are written, they can't have
Right.
kitchens and food, and it's odd, but
Mhm.
I'm sure there were reasons behind why they did that when they make those laws, but okay. And I know they're relying on them because I've got some friends that own them and they need that food there
Right.
to keep people in the facility.
But the idea we had in the committee discussion was that, we want to not just cover what we know is going on now, but kind of look to the future a little bit. Because we know this kind of activity is going to grow. And so we wanted to give the city the flexibility to be able to respond to some growth
Mhm.
in this without having to come immediately back to the council, to change the ordinance. So we gave, the city, staff some discretion to be able to manage that.
Thank you, Mr. President.
So, Mr. President, I just wanted to note, as chair of the committee, this is another example that we're trying to be proactive, to do business-friendly things for the community. This was originally an idea that was brought by somebody who potentially was going to come into town, but even once they decided they were not coming into town, as a committee and staff still thought it was a good idea. So we moved forward with it regardless of the need for a specific person, with the idea that this would be beneficial to other businesses. So like the distillery that's going in on Main Street. So I just wanted to point that out.
And Mr. Hoff, as chair of the committee, has done a good job keeping this moving. So we appreciate bringing this forward. That's it for ordinances and resolution. Did we vote?
We did not
We
vote.
did not
Mr.
vote.
President.
Right. So we need to take a vote on this instruction.
Can I ask,
Oh, yes, Mr. Hoff.
do you mind? So what did we decide? Are we going to add distilleries after microbreweries?
Well, we're not
Microbreweries,
amending-
distilleries,
we're-
and pub breweries?
We don't see the need to amend this right now, but the legislative intent reflects that that's what's, that the micro distilleries are included in the definition. And at some point, we will revise this, in a comprehensive way and come back perhaps with an expanded definition.
So, Mr. President, just for clarity,
Mr. Hoff.
Councilman Dayhoff, part of the thought process of that is the microbreweries and pub breweries is defined in other places within the code. So if we start changing that definition, then the ordinance becomes much more unwieldy, because then we're changing in all these locations. So the intent, we record it in the minutes, or the clerk will record in the minutes what the intent is. And the idea is, in all frankness, our zoning code does, quite frankly, should be updated. That's something I would like to see done. And when we do that, then it makes more sense to comprehensively, update those kind of definitions at that point in time. If I'm misspeaking, staff, please feel free to jump in, but I believe that's the reason behind why we're approaching it this way.
Absolutely, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President,
Ms. Imhoff.
just want to clarify that the zoning administrator has determined that Covalent is a microbrewery. So that's part of the application. So it's in the record. There'll be no,
That's right.
if for some reason this particular zoning administrator decides to move to Bermuda, it's still in the record. We won't have to worry about that. But don't put that.
And if I may, Mr. President, there was an actual determination, zoning determination specific to that property that's made it similar to.
Yes.
So there is that written documentation, that determination then carries in this case to anybody else that wants to do a microbrewery or pub brewery, that they can be a distillery or a winery. Right. Perfect.
Thank you.
All right. There's no further discussion. Move on to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes seem to have it and the ayes have it. And the ordinance is introduced and we'll bring this back. When do we think? Planning Commission is going to look at this first.
Planning Commission first with recommendation, then we'll schedule for Mayor Common Council. It's all geared to timing of public.
Understand. All right, very good. All right, you'll keep us posted. Thank you. All right, there's no unfinished business of which I'm aware. Does anybody have any unfinished business that they want to remind us of?
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you for coming.
Let's have a nice evening. Thanks again for all your help.
Sure.
Hearing none, we'll move on to new business. We have two items of new business. The first is approval of a sole source contract for replacement and installation of new cameras at the Longwell parking garage. And we'll go to the city administrator for that.
So during this current year, the Technology and Streets Department, the Technology Department and the Streets Department within the Public Works Department have been in discussions to upgrade the parking garage camera systems. The existing Longwell parking garage system is 10 years old and has been subject to many camera failures to the point of needing system overhaul. In fiscal year 21, the city held an RFP process to add cameras to City Park and Locust Lane. Through that process, we chose, Hyperion was the lowest and most responsive bidder, and they used the Verkada camera platform. The system has performed efficiently and without complaints for all parties involved. For the replacement of the Longwell parking garage camera system, staff recommends continuing the expansion of our existing Verkada camera platform by partnering with Hyperion Inc. in a sole source contract for the installation of hardware at a cost of $40,760.76. The technology department contacted Hyperion Inc. again after working with them during the original project due to the low cost and support they offered during and after project completion. The funds for this project will come from the following places: $32,000 from the Public Works Department in the streets facility and $8,760.76 from the IT computer services. No new funds are needed for this project. All funds are in the existing fiscal year 22 budget. Staff recommends approval of the replacement of the Longwell parking garage camera system from Hyperion Inc. for the quoted price of $40,760.76. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I'll move to approve the sole source contract for the replacement of the installation of the new cameras on the Longwell parking garage.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kavachi. I have a motion from Mr. Kavachi and a second from Ms. Gilbert. Is there any questions or any discussion?
Mr. President, I do
Mr. Huff.
have a question.
Sure.
So this is more, if someone could explain to me, this is more than just 13 cameras. It has to do with the system and then tying it into our network otherwise.
Our existing cameras are antiquated. Some of them are running on analog, and some of them are just out of date, the camera itself. So it has to do with the system and the camera. So we're replacing all of the cameras. Some of the cameras, we have 2 in one place that we'll replace with a 360 camera, but mostly we're changing the system. So right now, if we needed to check the cameras if someone vandalized the garage, we would physically have to go down to the garage to address that. This system, which is like the cameras we have elsewhere, we can address it virtually.
But correct me if I'm wrong, we have other cameras and this is the same system. So for instance, one of my points is let's say I found a cheaper system to use, it might not be compatible with what else we're all already using throughout the city. So that's the important point here, is that it's compatible with our already existing system.
That's correct. It's the same system that we're using elsewhere in the city.
Gotcha. Okay,
Right.
thank you.
And that's the reason, of course, for this being a sole source contract. So we can.
It is, and we just went to RFP last year.
Right. So we've tested the market recently.
That's correct. That's correct. And we're really confident with this particular vendor. We have the funds this fiscal year, and they are able to deliver the product this year as well, which, distribution of actual product has been an issue to supply chains.
Mr. President, I just
Ms.
have
Gilbert.
one pretty simple question. It looks like all the cameras are checking out the internal garage. Is there anything that checks out the external?
No, not in this process.
Is there a need for that, or I'm just asking since we're buying cameras all the.
We have a need to look at our camera system throughout the city. This particular process is just updating the internal cameras, in part because that's the budget that we have right now. I believe that there are at least some requests from the departments to look at that in the next year's budget. So stay tuned for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Gilbert. I think that's a very good point. And I think that, we ought to be looking at, the exteriors of city facilities. I know we've got one camera downtown, but I think, given the situation we found ourselves in other places.
Yes. Yes. And we've applied for some grant money, at least for the downtown area, not in this particular building, to help expand that as well.
Great. Anyone else?
Mr. President,
Mr. Dayhoff.
I can't find it now, but I thought when I had read it that to exacerbate the point of view of doing a sole source is that we got a 30% discount by sticking with this vendor. So that just supports the sole source. I'm really happy that we're going forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Everyone's had a chance to weigh in. Move on to a vote. All those in favor of approval of the sole source contract, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes seem to have it, and the ayes have it. And the contract's approved. Thank you. Mr. Kavachi.
Mr. President, I'd like to move that the Common Council adjourn to a closed meeting at the conclusion of the Mayor and Common Council meeting today in accordance with the general provisions of the article of the Annotated Code of Maryland 3-305B subsection 1 to discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of appointees, employees, or officials over whom this body has jurisdiction, and any other personnel matter that affects one or more specific individuals.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kavachi. Is there a second, to Mr. Kavachi's motion?
Second.
There's a second by Ms. Gilbert. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes seem to have it, and the ayes have it. And the motion is approved. We're now going to move on to departmental reports, and for that, we will turn to our city administrator.
Thank you, sir. It has been an extremely busy spring in the administration department. I'd like to start my departmental reports off by thanking the administrative staff, and that includes my assistant, Sam, and also our new city clerk, Doug. You can see how long this agenda is. These items take a long time to prepare, to do our best to try to have no errors. And my staff has been working so hard, and I just want to thank them for that. We're going to start off tonight with the police department and a report from Chief Ledwell. Chief.
Good evening, council. Just to add on to what was already mentioned with Councilman Kavachi and Councilman Gilbert. Miss Debbie Finch is the coordinator for the Opioid Prevention Coalition. She took that position, I want to say about a year ago, and has been an excellent partner along with our police department in making things happen. So we're excited about the direction we're going. We're working towards having this grant-funded team that will complement our police investigations in addressing the addiction side of the opioid issue. And so we're excited to continue our partnership with her. Today being the last day of the legislative session, I did speak with the Maryland Police Corrections and Training Commission Executive Director Al Liebno at the recent Academy graduation. And he said there were some proposed bills that we're waiting to see go through that could potentially alter some of the requirements for affecting police departments, the reform bills. Not ones that were mentioned tonight, but like with the mental health requirements, when that would need to be put in place, whether it be July 1 or October 1st, and then some other things, a little nuances that would affect our policies. So we're waiting to see what the turnout is after today, and then we'll go from there. But I'm confident either way it goes, we're strongly prepared to hit the ground running on July 1 or October 1. And that's it.
Are there any questions for the police department?
Yes. What did they decide to do with the accountability board?
As far as like the city,
Yeah, giving us an opportunity.
that I don't believe that.
I don't think that went anywhere.
No, it did not. It's
did
not
not?
going anywhere. No. Yeah, I think there was a big desire not to proceed forward on too many bills related to those issues.
Okay.
This year.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Edmonds.
The relationship that we have with the health department and the police department is really spectacular. The work that they are all doing to address the opioid situation is unique, and it is working, and it is keeping people out of detention and into a more sustainable and healthy environment. And I really appreciate the work both that Chief Ledwell has done, but also that the county, the health department continues to do, and those partners as well. This is one of those things that we don't really see, we don't really hear about, but it's an incredibly special relationship and setup, and one that I hope in the future we're going to be able to spotlight a little bit more with some metrics to show you how incredible it really is. But the chief has been instrumental in getting that going and keeping the momentum there. So I want to thank you again, Chief. Councilmember Dayhoff, do you have a report from the fire department?
Yes, and I want to also add that I think we're already seeing some results
Yes.
because we go on calls to the same house over and over and over again. And Councilwoman Gilbert and I, we attended that class. Remember, we attended that seminar down at the Maryland Municipal League when this model was put forward. It's sort of the same model of the Violence Against Women Act, where we visit the next day and we want to know what's going on in that household. And to go to the same house over and over and over again is really discouraging. And it's not good use of resources. Yes, ma'am. The Westminster Fire Department, we had a total number of calls last month in March of 550. 451 of them were EMS, 99 were fire. 300 of those calls were in the city limits. 196 of those calls were just outside the city. And overlapping calls was 50%. 50% of the time when we're called to respond to an EMS situation, they're overlapping. We have to call in Reese or Pleasant Valley or New Windsor to come in and help us out. I think that's going to do it for me. Thank you, Ms. Hemholtz.
I am a poor substitute for Ms. Gruber, but I'm here to give her report. The Recreation and Parks Department held a successful Easter event at Wakefield Valley Park on Saturday, April 9th from 10 to 1. Approximately 2,000 children and their families had fun walking around an Easter-themed activity trail, as Councilmember Gilbert mentioned. Traditional Easter egg hunts were held at 10:30 a.m. for 1 to 4-year-olds and 11:30 a.m. for 5 to 8-year-olds. The Carroll County 4-H Rabbit, and I don't even know what that word is, something else club provided a bunny petting zoo. And the Carroll County Beekeepers Association was also present with interactive learning experiences. An Easter-themed storybook trail was also available along the Red Trail, and that trail will remain open through Easter. Throughout the event, Mr. and Mrs. Bunny were available for photographs. The mayor had an opportunity to take a photograph with Mr. and Mrs. Bunny, and visits with children as they finished their exciting experience. Oh, she put exciting. Oh, how cute is that? I have to say, I was in charge of an Easter egg hunt about 10, 12 years ago in a past life, and I thought it was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. And it looked like child play compared to what the Recreation Department put together for the city of Westminster. So I'm embarrassed that I even thought mine was an egg hunt. Now that I see what a real egg hunt looks like. We are also busy preparing for the 39th annual Main Street Mile, scheduled for this Wednesday, April 13th, starting at 7 p.m. The wine stroll is scheduled for Saturday, April 23rd. And the Flower and Jazz Festival are scheduled for Saturday, May 7th. We've got some Fall Fest information, but we'll save that for the next meeting. Okay, so we're going to move on to the HR department, who's not available. Does anyone have any questions for HR or Recreation and Parks? Great, we'll move on to housing. Mr. Brown, what's good?
Thank you, Ms. Hemholtz. Good evening, Mr. President and members of the council. I have 2 items I just wish to update you on at this time. The first has to do with the refresh of our application list for people waiting to get on to our program, Housing Choice Voucher Program. You may recall at one point we had about over 1,600 families on the program. Through the refresh process, that number is now down to 754 as of today. A number of people had moved on, addresses that didn't come back, and so forth. So we're down to, I think, a much more manageable number and a much more realistic number in terms of what the actual waiting list is like at this time. The second item I want to bring to your attention is just code enforcement, to give you an idea that during the month of March, there were 107 code violations and citations issued during the month. Principally, it was for sanitation, which meant, there were some people This had to do with bulk trash related items, container issues where people were putting their trash out and not in a container as required. Motor vehicles that were unregistered and immovable, and then we had weeds and dead trees were also on the list of violations. There were some other minor ones, but these were the ones that we cited the most. I'll be happy to answer any questions that any member of the council may have about either one.
Mr. Brown, you said that we've now reduced down to 756 on the waiting list. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So what, time-wise, do you think that's now maybe a year and a half? Do you have an estimate as far as what that time frame looks like?
It will not be a year and a half.
Not even a year and a
No,
half? So you're thinking a year or
they-
less?
Beg your pardon?
You're thinking a year or less for that waiting
No,
list?
ma'am,
If
I
somebody
don't.
would-
I think it's gonna be a much longer period of time than that, principally because, it's gonna depend on how many people actually leave the program that allows us to backfill.
Okay,
So it's not gonna be anytime, in the next 2-3 years.
so you're still talking,
Yes.
if to start on the list, you're still talking a 3-year.
I do think that we will be able to bring some people off the waiting list. We've had a number of terminations within the last month or so. So we will be able to fill a small number from that waiting list.
Thank you.
Mr. Brown, I will just say, I think it's great that you were able to go through that list and work it down to where you are right now.
The credit goes to the staff. We have as you know, we have a very small staff, but their heart is big and they work very hard. And I commend them for the great work that they do every day, trying to provide housing needs for a number of the citizens of the city of Westminster.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Yes.
And echo your thoughts. I was here watching one of your staff stick around almost an hour after closing time to help somebody that really needed to get something done that particular day. So there's an urgency sometimes in the housing department that we don't always see.
It's true.
Okay, so let's move on to the planning department. Mr. Depot.
Thank you. So on Tuesday, April 5th, the Board of Zoning Appeals approved case 22-1, a special exception to operate a contractor's equipment and storage yard use at property located in Magna Way. Case 22-3, a special exception to operate a home occupation at 329 Meadow Creek Drive. And approved case 22-4, a front yard setback variance to allow the existing house and redevelopment of the front porch to be 4 feet 2 inches from the property line at 29 Washington Road. I think we're all familiar with that property. You've seen it. The roof is new, windows are new, interior is basically done. This is the last bit for that project.
It's crazy looking with the porch all still beat to hell, but the rest of the building looks nice
Very
now.
nice. So he's moving quickly on this and we should see this happen rather quickly. On Wednesday, April 6th, the Historic District Commission discussed the possibility of clarifying the type of required archiving information to be provided to the commission for properties located in the historic district requesting a demolition permit. This is one of the requirements as you go through the demolition permit process. It was a very good discussion, actually. HCC also discussed that they would like to have a table and will be having a table at the Flower and Jazz Festival. They've done this in the past. It's just adding them back in again. On Thursday, April 14th, the Planning and Zoning Commission is scheduled to hear a subdivision application for 528 Ann Drive. This is subdividing one parcel into 2 parcels for a new single-family detached dwelling. The good news about this one, it was part of an annexation. Allocation was already provided, so it should be fairly easy as far as allocation is concerned. Again, the Winters Farmers Market is open Saturdays up to April 16th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. and that's located at 29 West Main Street. That completes my report.
Is there any questions with planning department?
One comment. I really appreciate your work on the Crane House. Next to 288 East Main, that's probably one of the most historic houses in Westminster, if not Carroll County. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, we have one department left, that's the Public Works Department. I'd like to take a moment, though, to thank first the Utilities Department. I have a feeling that the Utilities Director is listening right now. They did quite a bit of work overnight when they had to turn off some water to the residents, and we received no complaints from it. The work was done well, and turning off water and not getting complaints from the residents is sort of spectacular. So I want to take the opportunity to thank the Utilities Department. And Mr. Glass, what's the update from the Public Works Department?
So I only have one thing to mention, and that is I'm also for substitute for Ms. Gruber.
I agree.
So unless there's questions for me, that's, I'm not.
Mr. President, I'd like to say one final thing. I want to congratulate Dr. Jaskin at McDaniel and thank her for her continued partnership. I was able to meet with her in September when I first got here. We outlined, the two of us, our goals for the year, and we used those to drive forward the things that we were doing, including grant applications that the city has applied for, and things that we brought forward to the Downtown Business Association that they're moving on as well. So I want to thank her and McDaniel for their partnership, and I look forward to working with her again. That concludes the departmental reports.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Imhoff. Final item on our agenda is citizens' comments, when we invite the public to address the mayor and council on any issues that pertain to tonight's agenda or any other city issues. For citizens not attending the public meeting, we invite you to send us your comments or concerns via email at comments@Westminster, Maryland. That's MD, Westminster MD. All comments received by email will be shared with the mayor and council. Commenters should include their address and phone number with their emailed comments. Now, is there anyone with us tonight who wishes to be heard? And if so, please give us your name and address for the record.
Mr. Mayor.
You're the last one left in the audience.
No comments? All right, very good. Well, that concludes our agenda and the meeting. And our next meeting, I would like to point out, 2 Mondays from now will be at 4 p.m. in the afternoon to accommodate members attending a public event of some significance in the community. So we will meet early and try and get out in time. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Never moved the meeting up when I was here for Tuesday.